it? Just be able to see each other in this way. Can you see me?
Hang on a second. I gotta put my, hang on a second. Okay, Richard, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I was putting an external speaker on.
Okay. So,
all right.
So you can see, I'm writing a book on shamanism, and I told you, that I don't have that traditional indigenous, only indigenous people are shamans. My definition is someone who has a different perspective on life, someone who thinks and lives their life outside of the box. And so, one of the first people coming to mind is David Schweizer. I've known you, ever since the 70s. And I remember at times you would come from Connecticut to New York City. That I knew you, in Miami. So a lot of interest in a lot of different out of the box activities.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I just kind of wanted to just talk about your experience. You've been an acupuncture for 35 plus years. And you. I mean, I really admired your lifestyle. I consider you just a part of my family. Just like my brother John. So So
we're soul brothers that go way back, Richard, way back.
Exactly. So I kind of want you to kind of go over your state of mind. We're always almost in sync. If something new comes up, I remember even that Kriya Yoga book. Both of us kind of grabbed that and took a look at that. And
isn't that wild? Yeah. Isn't that wild? I tell you. Yeah, there's some kind of morphic resonance between our minds, and we just kind of move into the same things and get interested in the same things. It's wild. So yeah, my beginnings go way back to where my grandmother. I give her a lot of credit of leading me towards the spiritual world, because when I was a kid, I don't know, 16, I guess, she gave me a book called Knowledge of Higher Worlds and Its Attainment. And sat me down real seriously and said, you're ready for this. This was by Rudolf Steiner. So
Steiner.
Yeah. So she was an anthroposophist, and prior to that, a Rosicrucian.
Oh, wow, okay. Wow. Yeah. I never knew that.
Yeah. So she practiced all that kind of stuff. And actually, my first meditation was after I finished that book. We met again, and she goes, what'd you think? And I go, wow, it's pretty heavy stuff. And she goes, well, I think you're ready to learn how to meditate. And I said, really? Okay, I didn't even know that was in here. She goes, that book is an initiation. Just going through it and reading. I said, that's wild. Her name was Mumsy. So I said, well, what do you got? She goes, well, I'm going to teach you the Rose and the Cross meditation. And I said, oh my God. So she goes, there's a whole thing with our minds and how we can visualize, and that was the first time I even heard of this stuff, it's like visualize. Wow. So yeah, it was basically where you visualize a cross, and then on it you place these roses around it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I won't get too much into the depth of that, because some of these are secret teachings of the esoteric world, but that was kind of my first introduction, and then just got interested in things from there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, so, funny, because that's how I got introduced, was through my grandmother. My grandmother, her mother was she with Mary Baker Eddy, from Christian Science.
Right.
So yes. She would always tell me, my brother, John and I, we were like that 3 or 4 years, God always loved you. And the way she said it, would just make my brother and I giggle and laugh. And she did that all throughout her life, so. And she never gave us teachings per se, but she just kind of represented just that nature, that kindness, love, compassion, and so it kind of made me, that I really admired, those characters, and so it's funny, how we get instilled with those at a young age.
I know, in such a young age. I mean, recently it's so funny. So I visited a few times. So when I got into college and we had breaks here and there, I'd go to the Goetheanum in Switzerland. And that's where the main study group is for anthroposophy. That's kind of their world headquarters.
Okay.
And that's where, the Nazis tried to burn down the original Goetheanum, which is just an amazing structure. And then they built one out of concrete with walls like about 8 feet thick, So I studied there, and that's where I got the feeling for health and taking care of the body. So that was the real early days, of learning how to use creative visualization, prayer, and natural substances. Because Steiner was he was an organic. He developed biodynamic farming. And he developed these remedies called all kinds of different names, but they were natural remedies similar to homeopathics,
Yeah.
And one of them was made from mistletoe, and it was a remedy for all kinds of cancers and things like that. So I got a little bit of exposure to it there, and then that piqued my interest over time. And then listening to. And then those early days, we were going to Paul McLean and listening to mediums and channeling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that stuff, they'd always talk about, like we say, outside the box stuff, and so it kind of hooked me. But, my first thing was I had to get through college, and then I spent 7 years in banking, in a big bank.
That's right, banking. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a degree in accounting, so I went into banking, and 7 years was enough for me. I just finally quit and walked out.
You had the mind for it, but you didn't have the heart for it.
That's exactly right. I could do it and figure it all out, but I didn't like that whole corporate structure of climbing the ladder and having to prove yourself to all these bosses, and that whole thing. Run up, learn how to make more money for everybody. That whole paradigm. It's kind of strange. But anyways, from there,
Well, it's kind of funny because at the same time period you were into Steiner and preventative medicine. In high school, I was into preventative medicine. I didn't even heard of the word before, but the way I look at it, this is the only body you get, right? There's no trade-ins, right? So at a young age, I thought, this is the only body you get. You might as well learn how to take care of it.
Yeah, exactly. And in those days, the first time I ever heard of, natural food stores, it's when I got involved with Maharaji and doing more Eastern philosophy and Eastern meditation. That's when I went to my first health food stores, and in the ashram, the local ashram, they had a little co-op. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Every center would have a little co-op, and on Saturdays we'd have all the grains and beans, and I remember farmers cheese and all that. That I always loved that kind of food, and talked about Govinda. There was always a I think it was Indian restaurant named Govinda, and I used to love to eat there because I used to love the Indian food, just the best.
Yeah.
So those were early days, and then so from Providence, I quit my job, and then I went down to Florida. my sister was working for a very rich guy and had all these rental apartments, and she got me into one for free. So I got in there and I figured I'll just spend my time looking around. And then that's when I got caught by acupuncture.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to a guy in Coral Gables. His name was Mark Wan, and yeah, he just had an herbal pharmacy, the old Chinese pharmacy with all the jars, you know.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
yeah, and he had even one of those old chests, you know, and one whole wall was covered with these old chests where you pull out the drawers, and you had all the herbs in there. And so I don't know, it was some premies that told me, yeah, this guy's great, you know, and you can just go in, he takes your pulses, reads your tongue, and, you know, writes you out a prescription on a big piece of paper and dumps the herbs on there, you know. So I went in there, and that was, it just fascinated me, you know. It's like, wow, this is so cool. And of course, in those days, there's no licensing or anything, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's 1980, I think. And so that's how it caught me. And then I figured, this is something, you could really do this. You could really do this for a living, you know. So, and then I tried some acupuncture. And my first acupuncture, Richard, I went out of body. Yeah, yeah, I was face down, and he put some needles in. I later learned they were kind of the windows of the sky kind of points, and down these points called Huato Jaji. He popped a few in there, and I just started spinning around, and next thing you know, boom, I'm up in the ceiling viewing my body with the needles in it, you know. It was really wild. And then I had gone out once before when I had this super high fever once when I was like, I don't know, 20. And so I knew enough that I could move around a little bit. So I went out of it. First I was in his shop and I'm looking at everything. And then I went out and I'm starting to move around the streets and I'm just flying around, you know. And when I came back, so he comes in, he takes the needles out, and I went bam, back into my body. And his wife was his assistant, and she was the one that spoke really good English, and his English wasn't so great. But she comes in and she says, well, that was your first treatment, you know, how was that? And I said, how was that? That was like awesome. You know, and she didn't know what I was talking about because she just thought I got a treatment and I was just feeling good, you know. So I thought that's what happened all the time, you know. But anyways, that's when I got hooked, and then I started. I went to a school there on Miami Beach, and
I didn't know there was a school there. I had no idea. You know, I was in Miami Beach for 6 years. There was a school there.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Oh.
Yeah, it was there from about late 70s till 86. I think it closed up just after I graduated, 86, 87, something like that.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. There was a school there,
and where was it?
And it was right on Lincoln Road Mall.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the coolest place. You know, and in those days you could rent something for just nothing. You know, it was all these vacant stores and stuff, and so he had this real vacant storefront. I think it used to be a bookstore or something because they had a lot of books and shelves, and so yeah, it was big too. It's really large. I mean, there were about 50 students, and he just brought in some folding tables and set up you know, a chalkboard in the front, and he was in business, you know.
Because I worked right around the corner. Remember, for the Miami Beach Police at City Hall.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, right around the corner.
Right around, and I had no idea. You know, if I did know, you know, I would have done that. You know, I didn't. Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah.
Isn't that wild? And it had a student clinic upstairs. It had like 2 floors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and upstairs we'd pull in the guinea pigs to practice on. You know.
Yeah.
So and there were a couple guys from China that didn't speak hardly any English that came and had some kind of visas to work there. You know, we had a couple of them come and go. But it was pretty far out, and so you know, I graduated from there. But when I graduated, So he was licensed as a secondary educational school, and he had all his licensing and everything. But when we graduated, the AMA sued to keep acupuncture out of Florida.
Oh gosh. Oh.
Yeah. So they did that, and so from 86 to 90, that's when I went out west and did all that kind of stuff, because I couldn't get licensed in Florida.
Yeah. Wow.
And then when I was out west somewhere, it was out there when I was with you and stuff. That I think was like in 87 or 86, 87. Anyways, I found out about 89 they won the lawsuit. So then I flew back to Florida and took the boards and passed them. I don't know how, because I had been out of school for so long, you know.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But anyways, I passed them, and then I started in 1990.
Well, okay. Oh wow. Huh.
Yeah, it's a circuitous route, but I finally got there.
Yeah. So I remember I even wrote a chapter in my dragons about David the dragon, you know, and
Yeah, yeah.
about, you know, you and acupuncture. I said, you know, David the dragon, you know, discovered, you know, acupuncture. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real weird thing to discover it in those days, but I was very much interested in like radiology and distant healing and energy healing, and
Yeah.
I also studied polarity by this guy Stone, and so I was just into all that kind of stuff. And then when I went out west, it was just really magical that whole time out there for a few years, you know. And so it was actually, you know how the universe does. I needed those few years to just travel and do all those things, and then it was perfect timing to come back and get licensed.
Yeah. 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 Oh wow.
Yeah. So then I had to sit down and have a little plan, you know, open an office and market yourself and do all that.
Uh-huh. Oh wow, interesting. So
Yeah.
around that time, that's where, you know, John Barr and I we got involved with the Monroe Institute. So, you know, similar lines, you know, when they stick the needles in, you know,
That's right.
you know, it created that experience. And Robert Monroe was using, you know, heavy sync. You know, he was using
Right.
different types of instruments, but basically, you know, doing the same exact thing, you know, a different way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Far out stuff. And I studied under a guy called Worsley, and he had a school as well. It was up in Miami Lakes, and I'd go there for classes and extra learning and stuff. He was a really far out guy, and that's where I learned the real essence of Chinese medicine. Was it actually started as demonology, Richard? Demonology. So you know, you get back to the classics. It's called Yellow Emperor's Classics, and you go back a couple thousand years or more. People looked at the body ailments and different conditions as demons, and the demons were to be released and let go. So one of the things they came up through trial and error, this and that, was let's puncture the body, you know, and let those demons out. So one of the real esoteric teachings, it was called release the dragons to eat the demons.
Oh wow, okay. Oh wow.
Yeah. So of course, as you know, in the Eastern philosophies, the dragons are wonderful.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah, they're auspicious,
right,
you know.
Right. Yeah.
And you get into the Western mind, and the dragons, you know, they're to be slain, and you know, that kind of thing.
And they're greedy, and they hoard gold.
Yeah, and they've got a cavern underground where they pile up the treasures, you know, and that stuff. So, anyways, so I got into a branch of acupuncture, and it doesn't have any particular name, but it was more giving more importance to the Taoism, which is the philosophy that is the foundation of Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And that the emotions are the etiology of many of the conditions. Mm-hmm. And so dealing with the psyche and the the soul, the corporeal soul, and Po, and all these different things, Shen, the spirit. Dealing with that is the highest level of acupuncture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I started learning that, and so you really have to sit and talk with your patient and listen,
Mm-hmm.
and then you come up with a formula to treat them. But the listening and the teaching is really important. And of course, today not many people practice that way, because it's more like sort of like yoga. It's been reduced to a technique.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Uh-huh.
needling technique and that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
so,
I told you recently, I wrote a commentary on the Tao Te Ching. Imagine this, I had this, the Tao Te Ching in my bookshelf for about over 40 years. Pick up the
yeah,
first chapter, chapter 1, and I would read it. I loved it, but I couldn't go through page 2. I couldn't read the rest of the book. So during this global shutdown, I said, I got time on my hands. I'm going to
yeah,
master this. so basically, I went through the entire thing, and what a master! I mean, for me, I got such great insight from it. If
yeah.
the world today would utilize just 1/10 of that knowledge, that wisdom contained in that, oh my gosh! And talk about even the current day affairs. What Lao Tzu was talking about for politics. Same thing is happening today. So it's kind of amazing how you learn that, let's say like 20 or actually about 30 years ago, and then and now because I always wanted to learn more about Chinese medicine and a Taoist, and reading that, I feel like I have a good handle on it,
Oh yeah, you do, you really do. I think back to, remember I sent you something on, I think I sent it to you, Jason Giordani, and he discovered how Gautama, who was the Buddha, traveled.
Yeah.
Isn't that far out?
Oh,
He's an Iranian scholar, and he discovered how Gautama traveled into China, and in China he was called Lao Tzu. I mean, this is going to turn over every book I ever read on Buddhism, and Buddha. And I've told my Buddhist one here who's a meditation teacher, and I've told a couple people, and they just haven't even gone in to look into it. And I find it like super fascinating, because how could one guy, the I Ching and the Eightfold Path and all this stuff, it's wild.
And you can see it because at that time the Persian Empire was extremely vast and went all the way to the doorsteps of China, and take a look at Afghanistan. They have, why do they have Buddhist temples there? Why did the Taliban shoot them? I mean, when I listened to that and I saw the YouTube video on it, my wife and I were just like jaws, struck. Oh my gosh, this is a whole different, history. I don't think we probably only grasp 10% of past history.
Oh, I know, and you get into these teachings, it just starts to blow your mind at what comes through. So some of the most potent teachings I learned, like these, using what they call the window of the sky points that allow you to connect to spirit and allow you to develop and move into a state that helps your body relax, release, and start the healing process. Just in being an acupuncturist, one thing I realized after many years of doing it is that you are working as a shaman, because just the techniques and going through the rituals that happen, there's a real ritual that's set up. A patient comes in and you're discussing with them, listening closely, and then you're taking their pulse and you're looking at their tongue, and it's a real ritual. And then they lay on the table and you go through this cleaning the points, and then you go over and you're opening the needles, And they're watching this, and what's happening is what's clicking in on their mind is that, okay, I'm here to allow my body to start the healing, you know. Let's let this begin. And so I was very aware of that, because, you know, just if let's say you don't put the right set of needles in, or you don't get to the area of blockages that you need to open, just the placebo effect is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So the mind of the patient kicks in, because you're going through this ritual, you know, and it is a big ritual, because what happens is, if you really get some points, the patient should kind of go into a state where the thoughts kind of drop away, you know, they feel energy moving in their body, and they just let go, you know. And you tell them, just relax, let the healing begin. You know, I'd say that, and then they'd go, oh, you know, and they'd sit back. And a lot of times I'd come in and there'd be tears flowing down their face, and they would just let it start, you know. So that is as important to acupuncture as it is to selecting, you know, and placing a needle in the patient, you know.
Yeah.
So that I learned a lot through that, and I saw the power of that. I just used it recently, you know. I'm basically retired, but I of course I'm still licensed, and I do a few friends and family and that kind of thing, a few people here and there. So I just got a patient up here about 2 weeks ago, and an old friend of mine, a guy I've known for a long time, and he really went down, Richard, from the collective heaviness, unconscious, you know, the fear that's out there.
Yeah.
And it really got a hold of him, and he went into panic attacks, extreme anxiety, and I would say close to a psychotic break, you know. And so, you know, when I got here, I knew I just had to see him and see what I could do. And so I applied all these techniques, and he just called me yesterday, and he finally broke through. He broke out of the anxiety. Wow. And it was severe, you know, with tremendous energy coming up from the lower chakras, coming up through him. He couldn't sleep at night. He hadn't slept for many nights. And it was through just the collective anxiety and fear that's going through the planet. He just tapped into it, and it just grabbed him, you know. So anyways, just using these techniques, we broke through, and he let go.
So that's kind of like that. That's the dragon slaying the demons.
That's right? Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, you know, the modern day version would be letting go. You know, the mind. You put himself in a state of relaxation where the mind and body get in sync, and it lets go of the trauma.
Yeah, and there's a lot of trauma there, and so we'll do it again. I head out there again on Wednesday, and we'll work again, and so it works, and this is the healing, of course, that the whole population needs, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a letting go of the personal self, you know, that self that drives you to just want more and seek this and chase that. All of that causes the disruptions and the depression of your energy.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would teach is just like a lot of these saints and sages have taught, you have to see what's going on and relax and release it. Keep your heart open, because as soon as you cramp down and close down around any of these events, that closing literally shuts down the acupuncture points. And the chakras, the large chakras and the nadis that they call it in Ayurvedic and India, the nadis or nadis, there's thousands of them, but the reason they close down, because you close down psychically.
Exactly.
So you know this so well. You see an event, and if you just awfulize that event and keep pumping your awareness into it and allow it to take you over, what happens is that suppresses your energy and you get depressed because your energy gets depressed.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like what we were talking before. The body's like we're all master chemists, whether we like it or not. Either we're good chemists or bad chemists.
Yeah.
Most of the population, we're not very good at chemistry. Most America, you can't even turn off, the stress hormones. The faucet of adrenaline is running 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And this is an angry nation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And even, Buddha said, getting angry is drinking your own poison.
I love that saying. Yeah. Yeah. Drinking poison and thinking the other guy's going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And scientists even know that, the last 15 years, they know that every thought you have either creates 1,500 positive chemicals or 1,500 negative chemicals.
Wow.
So we are our own, chemists, and so let's say when a person gets anger, automatically, whether you like it or not, first there's initial flood of adrenaline. That's how it's instantaneous. You can't control that, but for a second. But what you can control is the moments after. Instead of holding on to it, you then can go back into that state, of being just in a state of gratitude. Gratitude is the state that automatically restores the body and mind, to be at ease. So
yeah, definitely.
So nobody gets a free ride. But
no.
Yeah.
No. We're responsible. We're responsible for our own psyche and that experience that's going on. If you can get a lot of joy because you see something you like, and that's coming from within you. So why the hell are you closing down when you see something you don't like? You just don't identify with it. We all hold these beliefs, conditionings, and models within our mind of how we'd like it to happen. But if it's not happening like that model, don't go down the tubes about it. You just got to be able to handle it. And right now, of course, there's a lot to handle.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot going on. It's pretty crazy. We got a biosphere that's crashing. We've got, the planet's heating up.
Global shutdown. Mother Nature's told us all to go to our rooms.
Yeah. I mean, think of it. It's crazy. So, and my aunt, who was, she was a eurythmist. She practiced in Switzerland at the Goetheanum, and they teach eurythmy and psychology and that kind of thing. So she was a psychologist and stuff. And I asked her once, and she since passed a couple of years ago. And I asked her once, I go, what's going on at this? She would handle like very young kids and teenagers. And she'd tell me how some were committing suicide. They were talking about suicide and all this crazy stuff. And she says they're just tapping in to this collective unconscious of fear, and they feel it in their body. Right. So she would just tell them how to recognize it. And like you had just said, you've got to just feel it, release it, and let it go. You can't resist it. You got to let it just move through you and go. Mm-hmm. And she was telling me too, there was some kind of study out there where the emotion, let's say fear or anger or something comes up, it really can only last 90 seconds.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Have you heard that? I don't know.
I've heard that. Yep.
Yeah, it can last 90 seconds. So if you don't keep feeding it with the thoughts that started the whole thing, and you just, be still, let it move through you, the damn thing will go,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, yep. I've heard that time and time again. Yep. Yeah. And yet, so we know some people who hold on to it, an event that happened 30, 40 years ago. I can't talk to this person.
Yeah.
And you talk to the other person. Well, I had no idea what you're talking about. I forgot that years ago, And
yeah.
And yet, humanity, we hold on for dear life. Even
Yeah.
if we know that it's causing us harm, we still hold on. So that's kind
Yeah.
of a sad thing, isn't it? You know, I
Yeah, that
can't let
is.
this
That
go.
is. And I think that goes to the central identity too, when you keep ruminating on these things and reifying those thoughts and stuff. It's it's because you've lost. There's such a vast identification with that personal self, and all of that, instead of making deep connections to the essence, to the true self, to the awareness and consciousness that you are. And if you can't, if you don't have a meditation practice and be able to commune with that energy within you, then what the hell do you know? You're just out there getting pushed around by society and their ideas.
Mhm.
You don't get to your individuation, you don't get to that spirit that you are. And so I spend time every day, I commune with that inner
Mhm.
energy, you might want to call it essence, in Kriya Yoga, you can tap into it. It's funny, recently, too, I've been noticing, Richard, that in doing the Kriya techniques, I definitely feel the energy moving more and kind of, becoming with it. But I've also found that, this is for me personally, I don't need to really move that energy around doing the Kriya technique, moving it up my spine into the third eye or stuff like that. When I feel it, I just kind of commune with it. I just kind of be with it,
Yeah, yeah.
because she'll just kind of go and do what she wants. And
Mhm.
so I don't feel like I need to, other than the simple, techniques of, with the tongue and stuff like that, where you just sit and hold them, or
Right.
even get into the posture and I hold my hands like Lahiri. I mean, I just find that I'm just being with the energy now. I don't want to move it around. And maybe that's a phase, I don't know. But I feel pretty good with that. I don't know what you're
Well,
experiencing.
yeah, yeah. We're on the same wavelength. For me, there's a force field, the quantum field that you get into. The quantum field doesn't
Yeah.
care. Okay, focus on this. It exists everywhere. It exists in every single atom in the human body. So,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
so this is going beyond, the human body. The human body at that point in meditation should be secondary. In
Yeah.
terms of and what you're saying is true. There's that power of that, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You tap into that and you dissolve and you merge with that.
Yeah. I like that. Just merging with the quantum field. And then because yeah, the body, I don't want to keep focusing on the body and moving the energy that is that quantum field. So that I guess we just came to the same freaking realization again,
Yeah,
Richard.
exactly. I know.
I just been like sitting with it and letting it be, because I
Uh-huh.
mean, the me, what can the me do? Nothing,
Yeah. And
So
I just had this conversation with this the mystic and the scientist. So of course I was the mystic, and my other guy has studied for years quantum physics. So I told him that what is the power behind your breath? So what would happen if humanity paid attention to their breath? And he just said, how boring. I would never do that in 1,000 years. And I said, well, George, you come into this world and you take your first breath, right? All right. And then you take your last breath and you're dead. What about in between? Don't you think there's a battery pack that's keeping you alive? Don't you want to know the essence behind that battery pack? And he said, oh no, I don't want, I no, it's not possible, So,
oh man,
so,
yeah.
I was just thinking about, oh boy, if David was only here, he'd be chuckling.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, people, Sherry just ran into a woman, she's Facebook friends, and they share Zoom time and stuff. And she told her about some things she's studying, And she goes, well, that's just beliefs, and that's just, you know, philosophy. And Sherry said, no, there's actual real experience behind that. So she continued to say, no, it's just beliefs, conditioning, philosophy. And Sherry goes, no, I'm actually having experiences. But you know what? You have to have a little bit of a scaffolding. But if you would do this and this and this, you could actually walk that and experience it for yourself. You know, you could see how an emotional move through you and let go. You can feel the essence, you know. And so, but she doesn't want to do it. So for her, it all just stays mental as a philosophy, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, so what do you do with that? It's sort of like that guy. There's a lot of skeptics out there that think that way too. Instead of genuine scientists and looking at something interesting and analyzing it and working with it, they write it off. You know, it's all like this guy Michael Shermer. It's all swamp gas. You know, it's like, oh, they have parts of a vehicle. Well, that can't be, because vehicles could never get here from another planet. You know, instead of actually looking at the evidence and talking with the guys that are there watching the vehicles and analyzing them, he just makes stuff up, you know. So this is the it's the human mind. You know, what do you do is just observe it.
Mm-hmm. And yet, you know, I've been doing so much research in the last 3 years, you know, and the ancients have been talking about the quantum field. They didn't call it quantum field, mind you, but they talked about a field that exists in all universes, in all dimensions. Right. You know, they even had the concept, you know, the breath of Brahma, which is 16 billion years, one breath in, and the other breath, you know, out, exhale, is another 16 billion years. 16 billion, you know, mind you. So they knew about the cycles of the universe being created and destroyed. They knew that there's, I mean, I saw one scientific theory. They say 10 to the 28th power. That's how many universes, mathematically, that they say 10 to the 28th. That's a huge number.
That's a gigantic number. That's past a Google, I think.
Oh, yeah, way past a Google. Oh, wait, yeah. So that's kind of embedded, you know, in these ancient cultures that we can, you know, discover, you know, that sacred wisdom and knowledge. It's there.
Yeah.
But we pay so much attention, just like a carrot on a stick, externally. That way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the essence of it all. People are just they're just entrained into, I like this, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. And if you live your whole life in that paradigm, you can never break out and get to the essence of your being, because you just, all your value is into things that are outside of you.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why science has a hard time with what's inside of you, because it's subjective, right?
Right.
I see and I feel, and there aren't any instruments to quantify that right now. And I tell you, in some distant future, it will be where we can observe these things, right?
Yeah.
But right now we can't. So if you can't study it objectively, it doesn't exist. So that's caught, that kind of, you know, what do you call it? The reductionist mindset has caught most of humanity.
Yeah.
And there's only a few breaking through, like the guys you're talking to, you know. There's some that are really breaking through.
I love the story of David Bohm. You know, David.
Oh yeah.
You know, here it is. You know, his wife started reading literature on Krishnamurti, and she said, and she started scratching her head. Hey, David. You know, this guy's talking about the observer and the observed. You know, but he's using the lab inside. and you use in the lab outside. But both of you are talking, about the same thing. And so David was wise enough, once again, wise enough to say, huh, I'm going to have to investigate this. So he had a 25-year relationship with Krishnamurti. So
Wow.
and that's all based upon he had the guts to say, okay, well, I'm interested. I want to think outside the box. I'm an expert in my field, but here's another expert in his field, and he's going entirely, the both of them are going entirely different directions, but they're trying to reach the same place.
Yeah. Krishnamurti was a far out guy. I went to his center, Meditation Mountain, Ojai. Yeah, Ojai. Yeah, that was a far out place. Learned some stuff. They have a whole library there of his stuff. Yeah, I didn't know David Bohm was in contact with him, but I mean, Einstein must have really been in contact with these teachings too, because he used to come out with quite a few kind of Zen sayings, Zen,
Zen definitely.
Yeah, he had some good ones. Yeah.
And Tesla, Tesla was friends with Swami Vivekananda.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that was, so imagine that. I would love to sit in on their conversations.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Vivekananda, he was really far out, the guy, and I guess he was like one of the first real Indian swamis to come over, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's the very first one, 1888, went to the Chicago, the religions, conference. So
isn't that
imagine
wild?
This, a swami, he was invited to talk, and so his very first thing that he said, is my dear brothers and sisters. The Westerners never heard that before. Just from that, say, my dear brothers and sisters, they gave him a standing ovation. It was so far, outside, the current box.
Wow, isn't that phenomenal? Yeah. That just hit him in the heart. That opened the heart right away.
Exactly. Because they were probably thinking, a lot of, this is a fat Indian, just all, just kinds of negative connotations. What is an Indian? What kind of wisdom would come from India? But that was just, basically the straw that broke the camel's back, for humanity. Just that. Wow.
So amazing guy. Yeah. I think Steiner really liked him too. I remember they both at one time. I remember some people asking both Steiner and Vivekananda, like, what's going on with some of these people? How come they're, they're starting wars and murdering people? And, Steiner was very aware of Hitler coming into power. He told about him in the early 20s. He said, watch out. And he warned people of this. And that's why he moved his group out of Austria to Switzerland. And they both said, and this is really strange, I don't know what to make about it, but Vivekananda said it too. Not everybody walking around is actually a human being. And that used to really get me. And I'm going like, well, what are they? What's going on there?
Yeah.
I still don't have the answer to that, but Vivekananda said it too. And Steiner did too. He just said, listen, there's some people walking around that don't have that whole makeup of a true human being. And I thought, wow, oh my God, what are we dealing with here,
The closest I can get to that is I saw a thing on NPR about 3 years ago, and it was about chickens. So they did research for 3 years on chickens. So they took all the angry chickens from one group and put them into a group all by themselves. Then they had, the mom and pop, the happy-go-lucky chickens and the chicklets, And so then after 3 years, all the chickens that were aggressive, not one existed. They all died out. Now, if you take a look, at the other chickens, the happy-go-lucky, chicklets and the moms and dads, they were leading the ordinary life. So maybe that is the difference when they say that not human. the
Yeah.
ones who have that trait of aggressiveness, which unfortunately so many leaders around the world, have that tendency of anger, controlling this and that. So
Yes, that's really good insight, Richard. That I really like that because I believe at our very core nature is that we're very compassionate and loving and giving. There's a lot of people out there with the kind of paradigm that at our very nature we're evil and we're upset and we're killers and we're aggressive. We're fighting for territory. I don't think that is our nature. I think that's learned behavior.
yeah.
You
And,
know.
and and the way I look at it is life is a video game, in terms you go from one level, to another level. Ultimately, there'll be a level of humanity where you have the collective unconscious conscious. So
Yes.
in terms, even human beings, we rise to the point of awareness where we are the unconscious conscious, maybe not even in a human body. And for me, that's going from darkness into light. So it's
Yeah.
a video game, a stage. So and civilizations, the way I look at it, well, some don't fare too well. No, you don't get a free ride. So basically, some blow themselves up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
That's the Fermi concept. He was the physicist that said we're not seeing visitors from other planets and galaxies because they probably arise to their technology, but they blow themselves up, and so they don't make it here because their consciousness doesn't change to keep up with the technology that they get. So that's it. Boom. Let's hope we don't do that. I don't think so, but you
I don't
never
think
know.
we're going to do that. No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think there's so many people a lot like you and me. I mean, just think, you walk into a dark room and you just have just one match, and it lights up the room. It's not bright, but at least it lights up the room. At least you can see what's going on. And so right now, even with all this chaos, I think light is shining darkness on the darkness, and darkness has no place to hide. I mean, look at all these things that we never knew about. The children, being sold into slavery, for sex. It's a huge thing, around the world. That's all. All those darknesses that's coming to the forefront.
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of healing has to begin for the shadow to come up. And to be seen, bring it into the light of day so you know what's going on. What do you think about recently there's been some mathematicians and physicians that are leaning towards the theory of like you had just said, like a video game, like we're in a simulation, I think they call it. And I haven't looked into it too much, but I'm wondering if you've read it or heard anything on that yet.
Yeah, I heard about that theory. Supposedly, the entire universe is supposed to be a simulation. I don't know if I buy that per se, because for me, I think the universe is total kindness. And it's not playing a game, upon us in that way. It doesn't judge us. It doesn't criticize us. Now, it wants us to mature. Basically right now, I think we're spoiled brats on this planet.
That's the level we're at, toddlers.
I mean, who would ever believe, during this global shutdown, people say, don't wear a mask, I mean, there's and people argue, and basically, hundreds of thousands of Americans get infected. I mean, actually, how many millions of people have gotten it? And over 200,000 of people have died in the States. I mean, and we're still arguing. We can't get anything done. So, but I do believe in the video game we advance from darkness to light. I mean that, and every individual has that responsibility. it isn't, the world's responsibility. It's our responsibility.
Yeah.
We have to advance through the levels.
Yeah. 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 We're here to really, learn how to walk this dimension and understand it and learn the wisdom from the challenges that face us. And they're great for sure in our personal life, and then of course in society wide. They're huge right now. So yeah, I think it's interesting to hear that theory on simulation, but again, they've arrived at it through mathematics and not really any testing of it, sort of like string theory kind of came, and they never really could come up with a way to test it either.
Well, the closest I can come to that is you go to a movie theater, all right, and you're watching the movie, but if you turn around, what do you see? Light streaming from projector and projecting on a screen. So in one way, they're right. It is a simulation. It's not, what we think is reality really is not reality. We do get totally sucked into the movie, right? How many humans actually turn around, go inside, and see the light inside?
Yeah.
Not too many.
Not many.
So for that theory, which actually is not even a theory, which is practical and down to earth, you can say it's a simulation.
Yeah, at that level, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, I think this new, it's kind of these new paradigms coming forth from some of the leading edge physicists, where they're talking about how everything, the energy, the molecules, the subatomic models, are actually emerging out of this field of consciousness. I find that just fascinating.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's really just amazing, because that in our essence is what we are. We're made up of that.
Mm-hmm.
When you have this awareness and you're conscious, you're being aware. I mean, that is such a fundamental. It's just so fundamental. It's interesting that energy could actually, sort of self-effulgently push out material matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's wild stuff.
Yeah, that is. Personally, I just started a book today called Physics of Spirituality. And I'm writing it with my brother's business partner, Gurvinder, who's been studying quantum mechanics for about 50 years. But also at the same time, he's, he was in the same knowledge session as Miraji. He was 5, 6 years old. There was about 10 kids, in that group. His dad was I'm sorry, his uncle was Yogi Bhaja. Oh, I think I asked you before. You don't remember?
Yeah, I didn't know him. I heard of him. Yeah.
He is a real famous Sikh. So we're gonna go, and he has intimate friends, all around the world, so who are physicists, but they have the same point of view that we have. So I'm writing this book, and then also I'm going to interview all these people because he has all these connections, and so we're going to have talks with this person and explaining the latest scientific view, which most scientists refuse to delve into it because their careers will be at stake. If you have to follow the convention, as you know, and if you don't, then you get blacklisted. And David Bohm was a typical example of someone who got blacklisted.
Yeah. Who was that got blacklisted?
David Bohm.
David Bohm. Yes.
Yeah.
And Wheeler and some of those early guys, they were hitting on this already in the early days.
Yeah. David Bohm was a member of the McCarthy era. The commie underneath your
right.
He was interested in exploring different types of politics. We're in the United States, especially during the 50s. That's a big no-no.
Oh man.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, they just got rid of you fast. And what's Govinda and your brother doing right now? I mean, Is their business anything related to this or physics, or what are they up to?
Well, to be honest, I'll probably have to talk to you offline on that.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
you know,
Interesting.
there's you know, in the past, you know, there's parts of the government who like what they're doing, and there's a parts of the government that totally dislike what they're doing. When you
Yes.
try to help humanity, a lot of times there's a certain point. Some people will like it, and some people don't. So
Right,
we'll,
right.
we'll leave it.
Yeah. Well, it's like that in so many fields. That whole meme is gone through medicine and agriculture. You know, I mean, it's just unbelievable that even in medicine, you come up with a fantastic healing and cures for things. But if it didn't come out of the pharmaceutical industry and patented, they just don't want to know about it, you
Yeah.
know, and will actively suppress it. And that just hurts everybody, you know, and it's just tough. But monopolies have grown and grown and grown, you know, agriculture's one big monopoly now too. It's hard to
Yeah.
move outside of those circles too far as well.
We saw
So,
that as a kid. I remember like 5 years before my dad died, I asked him, "Hey, Dad, you know, how come you've been kind of pissed off towards the government for these years?" He says, "Well, okay, let me tell you a story. You know, I told you about the house of the future, but get this. During that time, my dad and grandfather built a house where your wife could wake up in the morning and say, 'Honey, you know, could you please move the bathroom?' So it was on tracks. So you can move, you know, the bathroom around. You can move components all around the house. And so when the government heard about that, especially the construction union in California, they said, if you ever get this off the ground, you and your family will be 6 feet under. That's the type
wow.
of that he got.
Yes.
And
Right.
we also had a Jeep where you could shoot out its tires and it would float downstream, and was cheaper, you know, than the Ford Jeep. But
Mhm.
we could never, you know, make a bid with the government for that. So,
Yeah.
you know, at that point, my dad was only, I think, 22 years old, and said, I'm out of this invention industry. Where he
Yeah.
became the youngest stockbroker then on the New York Stock Exchange. I think he was like
Wow.
22 years old.
That was probably a good move, though. It's interesting because my dad was inventing quite a few things too. He worked for, I think it was Dow Chemical, where he co-invented the wafer battery back in the early 50s. These
Oh
were
yeah.
the
Oh
real
wow.
small. Yeah. And so he went on, and he was a chemical engineer, and he invented other things too. And before the Valdez big oil spill out in the West
Oh
Coast,
yeah, not Alaska. Yeah.
he had been working on for several years an oil water separator, and
Oh
he
wow.
had it perfected about a year before that spill. And he even had the Coast Guard bought two of them from the company he was working for. These were gigantic machines. They were basically centrifuges they put the booms out around the oil spill, and the bow of the ship would go down enough to take in to you know, inside the cargo holds, it'd take in the water and the oil, suck it in, you know. And then these centrifuges, it would pass through these centrifuges, and all you had to do, it would pump water over the side, and oil, it would completely separate them. And all you had to do is pull up another tanker to start filling it up, and they'd pump it into the next tanker. So he figured it was called the first responders, and he had one down in Miami, and there was I forget where the other one. I think it was in San Diego, down near the Navy yards down there. So he had two of them, and he sold them to the Coast Guard. And do you know, when that oil spill hit, he was going crazy trying to get the Coast Guard to bring that, it's called the first responder, to get the booms out around the spill and start picking it up. And do you know that Exxon would not allow that ship to come up there anywhere near where it, and he was just going crazy. He goes, "What's going on?" And the politicians at the time called it off because they did not want to pay to run that ship and pick up the spill. They wanted to go ashore, and they said, we'll clean it up from there.
Oh, God.
It's unbelievable, Richard,
Oh,
just
oh.
unbelievable. And the same thing happened when you had that big, the BP spill, right?
On Gulf Coast, yeah, Gulf, yeah.
He tried to get them to put the booms out there. He had my brother going down there taking samples of the water, which he had to like smuggle out there. They wouldn't even let him near it in a boat. And anyways, they would not use my father's equipment. What did they want to do? He said they want to spread chemicals over the entire oil field, more chemicals in the ocean that the oil attracts, and then sink it to the bottom.
Oh.
It's unbelievable, Richard. This is what's going on. And this was all approved by the FDA, you know, whoever the big marine guys are.
Yeah.
So they never used it again. He says, I give up. It's just ridiculous trying to make and do these things. And then he found out the Chinese pretty much copied his patent, and they ran off and they're using it throughout Asia. But he didn't have the money to defend it or do anything. But he said he couldn't get the United States to use it. So it drove him nuts.
Jeez.
But he let it go. He wasn't the kind of guy to hold grudges or anything. But yeah, it's kind of, you're really up against some huge forces when you try to bring out something really good. You know, it's not an easy path.
Exactly. Yeah. You definitely got to have a sense of humor for sure.
Yeah, you gotta. Well, that's like me working in acupuncture. You had to like, you know, have a big sense of humor. But there's a group that you know their minds, you know, move like you're saying. Their minds move in the same field, and they understand what's going on. You know, it's not the sheeple out there.
Yeah. Oh.
So, anyways, it's been great, Richard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good to catch up.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Now people will know a little bit more than about David Schweizer. You know, when because I have a page, you know, all about you. But that's just one page. You know, you can't grasp. You know, truly, you know, having a conversation is 1,000 times more powerful than reading one page.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, we'll definitely stay in contact with one another. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for connecting in. Thanks for sending me the Zoom invite, Richard. And of course, we stay in touch.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later. Okay.
All right. Keep me advised on what you're doing with your book as it progresses. I want to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Say hi to Sherry.
I will. Say hello to Barbara.
Bye. Bye.